Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to show number 185 of the Arc Junkies podcast. Today's guest is none other than the weld scientist, Mr. Nate Bowman. Today we check in to see what Nate's been up to, talk about the progress of his mobile welding lab, discuss some deposition rates, talk about Lincoln's new hyperfill process, and much more. We'll kick the show off right after these announcements from the supporters of today's show. Today's episode of the Arc Junkies podcast is brought to you by Fronius USA. And right now, they're running their Dip Into Summer promo, where you can get an instant $600 rebate when you buy a Magic Wave 230i in either air-cooled or water-cooled, along with a Bluetooth accessory. You can choose from the Visor Connect welding helmet or the wireless foot pedal. The Fronius Magic Wave 230i AC/DC air-cooled TIG machine is another huge step forward in the welding industry. Fronius brings their state-of-the-art welding technology to a brand new AC/DC air-cooled TIG welder. Every time Fronius comes out with a new machine, a new standard is set and the world of welding takes a huge technological leap forward. This machine is no exception to that, and we know you'll be impressed. The Dip Into Summer sales promo is only available now until September 30th, so you still have time to take advantage of this awesome deal. We're also brought to you by Rockmount Research and Alloys. Rockmount makes some of the coolest electrodes you never knew existed. Check out their website, rockmountwelding.com, and review their full list of consumables to include specialty welding rods and wires for dissimilar metals, cast steels and cast irons, special alloys, and even rods for unidentifiable steels. They also have a full line of hard-facing and surfacing products to protect, rebuild, and repair all of those attachments to keep them from wearing down. And while you're there, check out their section of burr bits, grinding discs, drill bits, and saw blades. And now, Rockmount's made it even easier to get their products delivered to your business. Hop on over to mscdirect.com and purchase your Rockmount products directly through their website and get free shipping on all orders of the Rockmount products. We're also brought to you by Everlast Welders. Everlast makes machines to fit every budget and every skill level. It doesn't matter if you're new to welding or you've been doing this stuff for 20 years. Everlast has a machine that's right for you. Whether you're getting into stick, MIG, or TIG, or even if you're looking for a solid multi-process machine because you do a little bit of everything, or maybe you just need a new torch, or you're looking to get a wireless foot pedal for a machine you already have, Everlast has you covered. They even offer financing on some of their equipment with approved credit. You can get your side hustle up and going today with a new Lightning MTS 225 and a plasma cutter. So what are you waiting for? Head on over to everlastwelders.com today and pick up your next or first machine. And as always, if you buy any machine that comes with a stock foot pedal, use the code word ARCJunkies in the comment section at checkout and get that free Nova foot pedal and TIG torch upgrade. We're also brought to you by the Step Wedge. The Step Wedge was created by Jameson Burt, a triple-ticketed journeyman in the pipe trades and inventor and patent holder of the Step spatterproof wedges. He's a Canadian and he's dedicated to manufacturing high-quality and innovative tools for the pipe welding industry. Step wedges are available in 3 sizes, 4-inch, 6-inch, and 8-inch, so you can handle any gap on that print. The Step wedges are incremental, so you can handle gaps from 3/32 all the way up to a 1/4 inch. And for my friends across the pond in the UK and Australia, they also carry a metric step wedge as well. Each flat surface on the step wedge is machined to 5/1000ths of an inch tolerance and made from hardened stainless steel, so it won't contaminate your exotic alloys. The spatterproof wedge is plasma nitride carbon steel, making these wedges nearly indestructible. And right now, Step Wedge has a great deal for listeners to the Arc Junkies podcast. When you buy any Step Wedge, use code word ARCJunkies at checkout and you can get 10% off your order. Head on over to gapandtack.com right now and take advantage of this great deal. That's gapandtack.com. Wedges made for professionals. All right, everyone, with FabTech right around the corner, I wanted to give you all some information on some cool events you don't want to miss out on. On Sunday, September 12th, from 7 p.m. to 12 p.m., the FabTech 2021 Welcome Back Meet and Greet, hosted by Blue Demon, Weld Porn, Outlaw Leather, Fronius, Alumareel, and FlameTech, will be held at the Hard Rock Cafe in Chicago. On Tuesday afternoon, from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m., you can stop by the CK Worldwide booth for their Meet Their Pros event. And then on Tuesday evening, from 6 to 9, you can join myself and Stephanie Hoffman at Arcs and Ales, hosted by the American Welding Society at the Northman Beer and Cider Garden. You can RSVP for this event by going to pages.aws.org/Arcs and Ales. And then you can join me Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday at the AWS booth 30 minutes after the show opens for a live episode of the Arc Junkies podcast, followed by a meet and greet. Joining me Monday, I'm going to have the weld scientist Nate Bowman. On Tuesday, I'll be chatting with Rush Kane from Kane Industries, and then on Wednesdays, I'll be chatting it up with Sean Flotman, aka Dabs Wellington. Right after the recording, we'll have a session for a meet and greet. I'll see y'all in Chicago. All right, you know what time it is. Fire up your machines, drop your hood, and turn me up 5.
You're listening to the ARC Junkies podcast. Helping you make every weld better than your last with each episode. And now your host, Jason Becker.
All right, Nate Bowman, man, how the hell you been?
Dude, I've been good, man. It's good to catch up again.
I know it's been a while.
Yeah. I don't even remember what we talked about the last time. I think is the last one the Must Be Nice one?
No, I think the last time I had you on, well, it was before that. It was It Must Be Nice, but right after that, right after we kicked off the new year with you and Kane and I, we talked about branding.
Oh yeah,
and
yeah,
dude,
that's right.
since we talked about that, like it's been a reoccurring issue in a lot of the episodes, just talking about people's signatures, people's brands, and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. It's important. Yeah. It's important, man. I've watched a lot of people grow a ton over the past couple of years. I mean, it's been awesome just watching people just grinding away and winning. I love seeing people win.
Yeah, that's the coolest thing about this whole thing is like watching people set goals and crush them
mm-hmm.
and do well and exceed in what they're doing and succeed in life. And, just like, I've said in the past, like success it's different to everybody. Everybody has their own level of success, and you can't base somebody else's, performance and what they consider success as to what you consider success. Everybody thinks success is like, a multi-million-dollar house and a Tesla parked next to your Maserati, and it's different, it's subjective,
Yeah. Yeah, for some people, success is just like, geez, I mean, even personally for me, just like getting all my bills to the point where they're on like auto pay and I don't have to like be like moving funds around to be able to pay my bills.
That's
like,
a nice feeling, isn't it?
I mean, like that. I mean, it seems simple, but that's just the reality of how it is for, a lot of people, especially people coming up in the trades and things like that. It just, if you own your own business, not getting paid on Friday when you're expecting to get paid on Friday, and then, you got that car payment, you got your mortgage, you got your phone bill or whatever that is, like, that's tough for a lot of folks. And, that was a battle that I fought for a really long time.
Yeah, I worked for a company and payday was supposed to be on Monday, which was weird. And I asked them, I was like, why do you guys pay on Monday instead of on Friday? They're like, well, if we pay you on Friday, we've noticed that when we pay people on Friday, they don't show up to work on Monday. Because they piss away. I mean, like I was doing structural steel iron work for a non-union company, man. It was like, that was the reality of it. If we pay you on Friday, you're probably not going to show up on Monday. But I need you here on Monday, so that's when I'm going to pay you. And if I got your paycheck, you're damn sure going to be here. Nobody's going to lay out on Monday. Nobody lays out on payday, But it sucked because we got to a point with them like right around 2007 to where like, okay, it's Monday, it's payday, and either I would get the check or they wouldn't show up to the job site. They'd be like, hey, yeah, we're on our way, and like wouldn't see them till Wednesday. And it's like, man, we can't be having this. Or they would they give me the check and they'd be like, okay, you can't cash it till Wednesday. And it's like, dude, I've been waiting on this check since last week. Not only is it late, but it's already late, and I've got things. I had things set up on auto pay. Like I'm already in the hole in my bank account. And I mean, this was back in like 2007. So I can completely relate. It's nice to have things on auto pay or just to be able to bust out the debit card and pay for things, without having to check the account first.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, that's something that we all work towards and strive to be. I mean, I'm not rich by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm living pretty decent.
Yeah, me either, man. Just, I work 7 days a week still.
That's the thing is you've got to put the effort, you got to put the time in, and you got to set yourself up for success.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like that's I was talking to one of my friends, this guy that, he owns an excavation company. This guy that I've been doing some work on the side with, I met him about 5 years ago, and he he bought a 305 Cat excavator, used one. And he just kind of started this out, and this is like 5 years ago. Last year, his business did $3 million this year he's already done 10.
Damn.
So, and he's 36 years old, and, it's been so cool to watch him just build this business. I mean, I think he bought 3 new excavators this past year. He bought a 245, he bought a 60, and he bought a 17 just to have at his house.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's just cool. Like, this guy's only a couple of years older than I am, and, passionate about, working hard, works 7 days a week, doesn't live in a mansion, but makes, millions of dollars a year, but takes that money and puts it right back into his business, invests in his equipment, invests in his property. He's building a big ass shop, and, it's those are the kind of people that I like to surround myself with. And we were talking the other day, I mean, and, if somebody just gave either one of us $1 million, I was just telling him, I'm like, dude, if I had $1 million, I'm like, I'd buy another excavator. And he's like, yeah, me too. I'm like, that's what I want to do.
But I think that's the thing, is like, he's setting himself up for success. Cause like you said, he went from $3 million the first year to $10 million. And he didn't take that and go buy a speedboat and a mansion and a yacht and a helicopter and like all this other stuff. He went out and he bought 5 or 6 new pieces of equipment to reinvest back into the company. Like, I was having a conversation the other week with Sam Hackman, and that's exactly what he did. Is he would buy this tool to get this job done, and then he'd buy that tool to get the next job done. He'd take that money, you got to pay your bills, you got to live, you got to buy food and all that. But then you take that extra money and you don't go hog wild, you don't go blow that money on vacations and stuff. He reinvested it back into the company, and now he's expanded his shop. And I can see probably within the next year, he's probably going to expand again and buy more tools, and he's incorporating a CNC plasma cutter. So you're reinvesting these things, and it sucks to have that kind of money and put it back in and buy tools now. But in 5 to 10 years later, when the business or the company is right where you want it, then you can sit back. Now we can go to Jamaica. Now we can fly out to Paris and do all these other things that, we put off and postpone to get the business up and running, or, set ourselves up for success.
Yeah, that's been, perfect example would be like, I don't know, for me, like my job at Central Welding, like I make enough money here that I can like pay my bills, have enough money to, I was able to buy that mini excavator this past year. And that was, I still have to pay for that every month. Fortunately, I got, they had 0% interest financing on those. And I was like, well, if I get approved for this, like I'm going to make this move. And to me, I pay on this thing every month, and that's like my investment in learning how to become an operator, rather than, there just isn't any other way to like learn without putting yourself in the seat and actually doing it. Now, I can use it around the house and use it for other stuff, but I don't have like a construction, like a business license or any of that stuff to do construction or whatever. So this is just strictly for personal use. Maybe you go over to your buddy's house and do a little bit of work here and there. But to me, I've looked at that as like, if I went to a school to be an operator, how much would it cost me to go to a school to be an operator? How much, and at that point, what am I getting out of it? How much time am I getting out of it? What sort of connections am I getting out of it? And to me, that was just an investment in, in a few years, this thing will be paid off if I don't pay it off sooner. But the skills that I learned by putting that money, in that place, rather than, I've been dying to get a Porsche. I really want to buy a Porsche. And I drive a ton for work. Probably drive 40, 50,000 miles a year on average. And not saying that I would drive it every single day, but I really love driving, and I've always wanted a Porsche. The excavator is very similar in price to what the Porsche would cost.
Yeah, that's your Porsche.
And definitely like, it's definitely like, man, I could have this, but it's like you said, it's more about making the investment in the thing that's going to get you further later, because down the road, here I've had my machine for, let's say, I've had it for probably like 6 months or so. And my buddy Jesse that owns this excavation company, he'll call me if he's got a guy out or something like that. Hey man, I need you to come just load trucks for me today. And if it fits into my schedule with work, I'll take a sick day or take a vacation day or something like that, or we can plan it or whatever. And that's what I use my sick and my vacation time for at Central is I'll take the time off. I won't be on vacation. I won't be at the beach. I'll be doing some other work, some other place. And to me, that's been the best way to get ahead. And plus it's super fun. I mean, it's about the most fun thing that you can learn how to do.
I can completely relate to that. I came back to, from working full-time over at weld.com back to the school full-time. And I used up all my vacation time last year making trips out to Houston, to meet up with the guys from Outlaw Leather, and going to Des Moines, Iowa, to meet up with Crew Collaborative, and like going here and going to this event and taking a day off and going to judge a welding competition. And it's like that stuff that I find it really fun, fascinating, and interesting. But it's personal. That's kind of like that's for ARC junkies, and it's for me. It's not for the school. I'm probably gonna end up taking some vacation time to go up to Fab Tech. It's just kind of the lay of the land, and then I've got like a boxing event out in, I think it's October, out in Houston. We're going to do automation versus like non-automated. So manual welding versus automation in a boxing ring down there in Houston. And I'm going to be I'm going to be the referee. And so we're going to have some people over here that are like for automation and some people over here that are for manual welding. And it's going to be like kind of like the clash of, who's the best, kind of like a box it out type deal. And it's a shameless.
It's just weld time.
Yeah. It's just, it's
weld
be,
time and quality.
Yeah. Well, weld time, quality, setup, cost effectiveness, all this other stuff. But then right after that, it's going to be there's going to be a live boxing match. And apparently this is the same place that Muhammad Ali trained in back in the day. But I'm going to take vacation for that because that's something that's not related to my current occupation or my current job with my current employer. So I've got to take time off to do that. But I'm investing in myself, something that's interesting to me. It's kind of a side hobby and a side hustle. And so I can see giving up vacation time to go pursue a second passion, So like I seen it's paying off for you because you're out on an actual job site. I seen you running the excavator and stuff the other day on your Instagram.
Yeah, I was in a 470. A 470 is the biggest one I've ever run. My job was basically they had an 800 size excavator. So that's an 80 ton excavator with a giant breaker on it. And they're breaking up all this rock. And obviously if it has just the breaker on it, it can't move all the rock out of the way once it's broken it. So my job was to move all the rock up onto this upper deck where they could load it out into the trucks and get rid of it. And then keep the area where the tracks are underneath the excavator and that whole area around that, clean so that the guy operating that machine can, just keep breaking away at the rock. Mm-hmm. So you have I'm in a machine that's, 47 tons, and he's in a machine that's 80 tons. You can just imagine, you can't, if you touch the two of those together, you could just cause, you could destroy something, So just getting, being able to just get asked, just to me, that's everything. Just getting the phone call, hey dude, can you come over and run this machine? And just being trusted with something that is that big and that expensive. It really, that's such a good feeling. It would be, like in the welding industry, if you've been trying to, break into the welding industry, you're working in a shop or something like that, and your buddy owns like a big steel shop someplace and calls you up and is like, hey man, I need another welder to just come weld on these parts, and they're critical parts and they trust your ability to be able to do that. That's one of the things that's really I've thought about a lot with the trades. When you learn a skill, that's something that can't be taken away.
Yeah.
And I say that I think a lot on these podcasts, but I think about that a lot. And how, no matter how much things suck in other parts of your life or whatever, at least you can still weld. At least you can still, swing a hammer or do tile or, whatever whatever your skill is, that's not something that ever goes away. And, I think the tradespeople really kind of hold on to that. And, it's like a good feeling. I mean, it's just something that you can always have.
Yeah. Like you said, it's something that nobody can take away from you. And that's why I like encourage a lot of people, like, okay, you want to go off and get a degree? Awesome. Go learn a skilled trade first, because worst case scenario, you can keep doing that skilled trade. Nobody's going to take that away from you. And it's always going to be in demand. Electrical plumbers. I mean, like, I bitch about, like, especially down here in Florida, if my air conditioner goes out, it's like, shit, man, it's a necessary evil. Like, I know I need this thing so I can actually sleep at night, because if not, it's going to be 100 degrees in the house, like, literally. And, I'm down here, it's like in the swamp country, so it's going to be humid as hell. So I'm just going to lay in bed all night sticky. I've got to pay that HVAC guy to come out at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I've done it before, to come out and fix my system. And I pay him a premium to come out at that time, So, like, if you get into HVAC, you get into welding, you're always going to have a skill that's in demand that you can charge a premium for, because people need that service and they can't do it,
Yeah. Yeah. And, the need for that, need for these skilled trades is like, it's getting greater and greater. I mean, and if people don't believe that that's really a thing, I mean, we've talked about this lots of times in the past, like, is there a skills gap? Is it a wage gap? Is it whatever, it's all of those things, but, it doesn't mean that the work doesn't need to get done still, one way or the other. So there's still opportunities there. And I feel like, if you're in school, if you're like a high school student, or you're in college, or you're kind of thinking about getting into the industry, or just starting out in the industry, I mean, think about everybody that how many people do you know are doing the same thing that you're doing? How many people do you know are, getting into welding or construction or whatever? Like, what if no one that is doing it, and nobody, like, that should be a pretty good indication that, like, it's going to be something that's in need. Mm-hmm. Automation only goes so far. I mean, you talked about this automation versus handheld welding. This is a perfect example of, if you want to win, the secret to this, by the way, is deposition rate. That's going to be your key to winning. If you want to beat the automation, you need to make sure that what your wire feed speed is higher than that of the robot. And you need to nail your weld size. So we were talking a little bit earlier about, like, bringing up deposition rate, and not a lot of people understand. People talk about it, with like stick welding versus MIG welding, flux core versus solid wire, different wire diameters. So if you want to dig into deposition rate a little bit, we kind of talked a little bit about, I'm going to be doing a trip to Lincoln here next week, and I'm going to do a bunch of stuff with Hyperfill, which I thought was the king of deposition rate until I saw this other process that I didn't even know existed.
Subarc?
It's rotating spray transfer. Apparently,
I've
40 pounds an hour deposition rate.
The contact tip spins in a circle.
No. That's the oh my God. Don't even get me started on that stupid spinning contact tip thing.
Okay.
Because
So
all right,
that's
here's
not
the
it
deal
then.
with deposition rate. Okay. Because that thing,
Mm-hmm.
they came and pitched the thing with the contact tip that spins.
Yeah.
That makes sense if you're doing, like, let's say you're doing like a cladding operation where you want to build up metal over a wider area, right? Like, you want a really wide flat puddle, and you're doing like build up work.
Mm-hmm.
That I could totally see. Whatever they argue that, like, oh yeah, this has higher deposition rate than another process. People will argue that, like, metal core has higher deposition rate than solid wire, or flux core or whatever. So let's get into how to calculate deposition rate. So if you take, deposition rate is entirely based on your wire feed speed. So the higher you turn your wire feed speed up, the more wire is going to go into the weld puddle.
Right.
So you have let's use like 035 solid wire, for example. So 035 solid wire at, I'm going to see if I can pull up some of my notes here. Can I close this or no?
I got you covered. What do you need?
Crash.
035 on spray?
You what?
I said, I got you covered. What are you running? 035 on spray?
Yeah. So 035 wire, give me like a wire feed speed that would work well for, I'm going to send you my deposition rate multiplier chart right now, actually. Okay. Have I sent you this?
Not yet.
This is going to give you all of the information. You should be able to see all the stuff. I just texted it to you, so you should have all this stuff, and we'll be able to reference this here. But I believe it's 0.017 times wire feed speed, and that is going to give you pounds per hour deposition rate. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So when you squeeze the trigger at a given wire feed speed, a certain amount of wire comes out. If we know how much 1 inch of that wire weighs as welded, right? Like, because obviously there's process efficiency in there. Short circuit's going to be less efficient than spray transfer. You get a little bit of spatter, or if you run like with straight CO2, you're going to get a little bit more spatter with solid wire than you would with 75-25.
So are you talking 1 inch of the actual weld wire or 1 inch of weld?
1 inch of weld wire.
Okay.
So we don't necessarily, you calculate deposition rate in pounds per hour, and how you program a robot to make a weld, you have to calculate it based on the deposition rate and then the weld size. So determining your travel speed is like weld weight divided by deposition rate times 12, or it's like, there's parentheses. You got to do like one part of the formula first and then the other part. But long story short, deposition rate and wire feed speed are tied together. The higher you turn up your wire feed speed, the more metal is going to come out, the more is going to get deposited. So that being said, so if you want to do some math, right? So let's do 035 wire at 200 inches a minute, because that's something that everybody can understand, right?
Yeah.
Like everybody's welded with 035 solid wire. So what's 0.017 times 200?
Slight pause. 3.4.
3.4 pounds per hour deposition rate. So if you have a part, right, like in this like welding versus the robot battle, you have a part, it's going to require a certain amount of weld metal in order to be completely welded out, right? A certain volume of metal.
Right.
So if you're able to increase the rate that you deposit that metal, you can cut the weld time down. Make sense?
Yeah.
So 035 solid wire at 200 inches a minute. If you're building a part, like let's say you're billing for a job, right? Let's say you have, it's a job that's going to take you a week to weld this part out, and you set your machine at 200 inches a minute, and you just start welding at 200 inches a minute. You're putting down 3 pounds an hour.
3.4 out. Yeah, an hour. About 3.5 an hour.
Okay. So that's if you were welding nonstop for the entire hour. No one ever welds nonstop for an entire hour, like on average over the course of a day. Average is around, I believe, 8 or 9 minutes an hour is like the average, what we would call operator factor. Mm-hmm. This is all certified welding supervisor stuff. So if you're able to increase that deposition rate by turning your wire feed speed up, so let's say rather than 200 inches a minute, you turn that 035 short circuit up to a crispy 350 inches a minute. So what's 350 times 0.017?
You're looking at 5.95, so about 6 pounds an hour.
About 6 pounds an hour. So at 350 inches a minute with your solid wire 035 in a really crispy upper end of short circuit, you're putting down just over 5 pounds an hour. So you can just see the difference between those two wire feed speeds. If you only need to put in, if you need to put a certain amount of weld in, you just reduced your weld time by whatever the difference of those two are. So if you're trying to get paid for a job, or you're and you're billing out for the job, your time is your money. So if you can reduce the amount of time that you spend under the hood welding this, because by changing your settings, you can reduce the time that it takes you to weld out the part.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you can get this part in position. Let's say it's all let's say it's 5/16 or 1/4 inch or so, and you could run spray transfer on this. Like, it's all fillet welds. You can really kind of crank it up. What's 500 inches a minute times 0.017 with this 035?
You're looking at 8.5 pounds an hour.
There you go. So there's your settings between 200, 350, and 500 inches a minute. You can, if you can kind of understand now, like if you have like a Miller 252 or 250 amp machine, you can run 500 inches a minute, 27, 28 volts and some 90/10, and you can get into a spray transfer with that machine. You're around 235 to 245 amps or so. So you have you're maxing out that 252. There's not any other way to put any more metal out with that machine. Mm-hmm. Like if you go, let's say you went to, a lot of people argue like 045 flux core. If you look at my sheet there, what's the deposition rate multiplier for 045 71T1, like a flex core?
045, you get a factor of 0.21 or 0.021.
Okay. So it's only slightly more than solid wire because you're really only depositing just the sleeve, just the jacket, the metal part on the outside. The rest of that is powdered, is like powdered flux on the inside. So most people run 045 71T1, 300 inches a minute. So what's 300 times 0.021?
How many inches a minute did you say? 300?
300. Yeah.
6.3.
6.3 pounds an hour. So at 300 inches a minute with 045 dual shield, you're thinking that you're putting out more metal, but you could actually put down more metal and you don't have to slag anything with the exact same machine, but using 035 solid wire versus 045 71T1.
Right.
And at 300 inches a minute, you're only at like 180, 190 amps. So not only are you going to get better, you're going to be able to weld faster with that solid wire. You're also going to get a better penetration profile, and you have no slag to chip.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, that and you're not getting slag in your toe because we've already discussed this. If
Yeah,
you're in a 2F position,
you're
going to trap slag in that toe damn near every time.
Unless
you get out of
10
position.
times out of 10.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty good basis, for people to kind of understand, like, okay, if you buy a machine, if you're shopping for a machine and you're a shop and you're going to do any sort of welding on stuff over 1/4 inch, you need to be looking at a machine at 300 amps or more.
Yeah.
If you're buying these Miller 252s, I call them Miller 252s, but I mean, any 250, 280 amp machine, the maximum deposition rate that you're going to be able to get out of that machine is going to be maybe 9 pounds an hour or so. And that's 035 solid wire at 500, 550 inches a minute or so is going to be right around 10 pounds an hour.
Mm-hmm.
So if you start looking at, let's look at like my Power Wave, the C300. What is, what's the deposition rate multiplier for 045 metal core?
045 metal core, you're looking at 0.0246.
Okay, so 0.0246 times 500.
So now you're talking 12.3 pounds an hour.
That's as much as I can weld on my C300. So we're using a little bit. We're messing with this a little bit. So because the metal core is not a solid wire, it can't carry current across the full cross-sectional area of the wire. So it's going to carry
just the outer
most
jacket.
of it in the jacket and some of it through the center. So you're going to have lower amperage. At 500 inches a minute, if I remember right, it's about 308 amps. That's what I measured it on my Power Wave. So maxed my Power Wave all the way out. 308 amps, 500 inches a minute is just over 12 pounds an hour. So 045 metal core, which is flat and horizontal only, 500 inches a minute is 12-ish 12 pounds an hour. That's a 300 amp machine maxed out. So you can see the difference now in, if you're a weld shop and you're doing production work and you're investing in a new piece of equipment, you really have to consider this deposition rate number, as the output of your machine is going to determine the maximum deposition rate that you're going to be able to put out. There is absolutely no way around this. When you program that robot that those guys are going to weld against, they're going to have a wire diameter, whatever wire that they run in the robot. Most robots are going to run like 052, or 1/16. They run large diameter wires because why would you not if you're a robot? Mm-hmm. You can take and figure out what the wire feed speed is on the robot as a competitor, right? Like you could say, hey man, where are you running that wire? You could use these deposition rate multipliers, determine what the deposition rate of the robot is going to be. And then you can just, if your machine has the output, you can weld faster than the robot by running at a higher wire feed speed, or using a different wire, or using that, understanding how that deposition rate works to your advantage. Otherwise, there's no way that you can win. Like, you can't weld faster, like, if the metal's not coming out any faster, which is why deposition rate is so important. And that kind of leads us into hyperfill. So hyperfill's deposition rate is 2 035 solid wires through the same contact tip going into the same puddle. So that 0.017 is now 0.017 times 2 times your wire feed speed. So I actually have a little thing that says HFill. So I already did the math on that. So you can take hyperfill, and let's say we're going to run hyperfill at 500 inches a minute. So what's the multiplier for hyperfill? It should be under 70S6 there at the bottom.
Okay, hyperfill, you're looking at 0.034.
Okay, so 0.034 times 500.
Okay, you're looking at holy shit, 17 pounds an hour.
Yes. So now you see what's happening here. This is where, if you're a shop and you're doing welds on something that is, I would say, 3/8 thick and up, and you're not over 10 pounds an hour, like, you are throwing away 50% of your productivity, probably, by not looking into deposition rate. If you're using 252s to weld stuff that's 3/8 thick, like, the most that you're ever going to be able to put down is 10 pounds an hour. Mm-hmm. And we have the technology, just even in a larger machine with more output, to cut your weld time down significantly by looking into solid wire and spray transfer, metal core and spray transfer, or just maybe even a 7/0 T1 in position, flat and horizontal, only flex core wire. This is probably one of the easiest things that a shop can do to reduce their weld time. And I'm not saying you need to invest in a piece of hyperfill equipment, but those numbers right there really kind of show you how much further you can push this.
Because to get even close, you'd have to run 052 in a spray transfer at, 485 inches a minute, 32 volts. You'd be kicking out 430 amps at 17.1 pounds per hour. So you'd be pretty close using that. But that's a 052 wire. That's a big boy wire right there.
Yeah, and not to mention, you hit on something here too. The voltage. The voltage is another part of this whole thing. This is why I've had a lot of people, when I posted the hyperfill, they're like, why don't you just run a huge wire? Like, why would you bother? Why do you need hyperfill? Why do you want two wires coming out the same contact tip when you can just run a big fatty? Well, like 33271, 70 T1, I actually have that deposition rate multiplier in there as well. You should see 70 T1, 3/32 of an inch.
Yeah, 0.088.
So, yeah, what was it?
0.088.
Yeah, that's putting some metal down.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is maximum single pass fillet weld.
5/16.
Okay, well, what happens if you increase your voltage? What does that do? It makes your arc taller and wider.
Mm-hmm.
So typically a 70T1 will either be run with 75% argon, 25% CO2, or straight CO2, which requires yet even more voltage to be running. So if you're trying to put a 5/16 fillet weld in with this coat hanger size wire at 30 something volts, you're going to have arc deflection. Like when you're, I mean, if you're trying to put a 5/16 fillet weld in, imagine the travel speed that you're going to have to, like how fast you're going to have to move in order to put that down.
Mm-hmm.
So with Hyperfill, what they've done is they run 90-10 gas, requires less energy to ionize. They're also running a pulse program, so it's pulse, so it's decreasing. Your average amperage is going to be lower, so you can have less heat input,
Less deflection,
and you're going to have less deflection. You're going to have a smoother transfer of the droplets across the arc because it's a controlled waveform where it's pulsing and it's shooting those droplets across the arc, by using the wave.
Mm-hmm.
That is going to give you a lot more accuracy in putting those 5/16 fillet welds in. It is literally engineered to make 5/16 fillet welds. And that's why Hyperfill is even a thing. That's why it's easier to use that than it is to use a larger diameter wire is like, I guess what I'm getting at.
I see the setup you had. Are you running the contact tip's got two holes in the right at the end of the contact tip? Are you running a bigger gun? So I mean, like, are we
500
compromising?
amp water cooled gun.
Okay, so it's going to be a bigger gun.
It's pretty much the same size as a normal gun. It isn't any more difficult than running like a Cobra. It's smaller than a Cobra. It's just a water cooled MIG gun that has just a big fatty kind of cable on it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the gun is, I will say, the gun is a little bit to get used to. But I mean, if you're welding on, like, let's say on the flip side of this, what size gun would you need to run 3/32 70T1?
Yeah, that's true.
Or what size gun are you going to need to run that? Like you said, 052 solid wire at 480 inches a minute, or like, what did you say it was? Like 480 inches a minute, and it's going to be like
485 inches a minute, 32 amps. Yeah, it's going to be a girthy gun because I mean you're kicking out 430 amps, so you're going to need a 500 amp gun anyway.
Exactly.
Especially if you're running any kind of pulse current, because you're going to have peaks in there.
Yeah, exactly. So that's really the gist of like Hyperfill, and it is literally engineered to make 5/16 fillet welds. So this is your beam work. I think about that guy, that GMAW welding Belgium guy, my hero. That guy he runs the smoothest spray transfer stuff like ever. So beam work, anything I would say 3/8 of an inch plus, where you're doing clean material. I mean, I think excavator buckets, guys like, rebuilding buckets and things like that, or rebuilding heavy equipment where you really just you're just pouring metal in to fill in and get that weld size built up, where you're putting multiple passes in. Mm-hmm. That's really where this system shines. And, it's not for everybody, but it is for people that, like, there's all this technology out there for people that are willing to push the limits. And that's what, I really want to kind of showcase for people to understand is, you can go to the store and you can buy any machine off the shelf, but you're just buying Chevys and Fords and Toyotas and whatever. If you start looking into some of this other equipment, like, Hyperfill, companies like Kempe with the X8, OTC Welbys, Continuums from Miller, any of these advanced process machines that run, different types of pulse programs where you can run very, very high wire feed speed, and you're doing, you're able to put more metal in. Like, these are the Porsches, these are the Lamborghinis of welders. Fronius would be another example of those guys that does a lot with the pulse spray transfer. But if you're not using this technology, you can't just pretend that it's not out there. Mm-hmm. It'd be like you driving around in your like Ford F-150 and you're like, man, this is the fastest truck around. And it's like, dude, you don't even understand. Like, they have like, way better stuff out there, whether you choose to use it or not, like it's
still there.
It
still
still exists. Yeah. And, there's lots of places around the world that have already taken advantage of this technology. And that's really what I'm going to start shifting what I'm doing, not only with coming out on YouTube, but on Instagram as well, where I'm going to start showcasing a lot of using this technology in real world places, because we have a lot of welders out there that are very high, are very skilled, and they can push a 252 to its absolute limit, no problem.
Mm-hmm. But it's got a limit.
It's got a limit, can you imagine having somebody that's got tons and tons of skills, and then you get them set up on a machine like a Power Wave or Continuum or, any Fronius OTC or whatever, and then you teach them how to do the fine tuning and all the fine adjustment, like they can take that limit even further probably than even I can. So I think it's just a really exciting part about the industry. I mean, this technology's been out for a while, but it's being very underutilized.
All right, we're going to go ahead and take a quick commercial break. This segment of the Arc Junkies podcast is brought to you by AHP Welders, which are ideal machines for students, home hobbyists, makers, and those looking to learn on their own. You can get into stick, MIG, or TIG welding right now for under $1,000 without having to sacrifice performance. I've used these machines several times in the past, and they perform great. Get your AHP machine today at ahpwelds.com. We're also brought to you by Strong Hand Tools. Just hop on over to stronghandtools.com/ArcJunkies and check out all the cool, awesome equipment and tools they have to make your life as a fabricator more accurate and faster. We all know time is money, and accuracy is key. So start using some tools that'll help you get more accurate and increase your time in your shop life. Stop by stronghandtools.com/ArcJunkies and check out all the cool tools and innovations they have to make your life as a welder and a fabricator that much easier. All right, now let's get back into the show. And I think that a lot of that falls on employers, because like I meet up with employers all the time. And like I was actually impressed the other day. I went to a place over here locally in Lake County, and I walked in their shop, and they're doing like heavy stuff, right? Like heavy fabrication, heavy structural stuff. And I was surprised that they were using all advanced Power Wave systems, because any other company I've seen, they got the 252s, or, they've got like all this prehistoric equipment. It's like, you guys are trying to crank all this stuff out, and you're running like short circuit on this stuff, or, like talking to the structural guys, a lot of them, they're working out of man baskets and man lifts, and they're still running stick welding. And it's like, you do realize that there's flux core wires that will not only increase deposition rate, but electrode efficiency. And I had this conversation with my students the other day. It's like, what's the electrode efficiency of shielded metal arc welding? Anybody want to guess? And they're new students, so I kind of had to explain.
It's like a pound or something an hour, or something deposition rate?
3 to 5 pounds an hour, but the electrode efficiency is 60%. So that means if I buy 100 pounds of 70/18 1/8-inch diameter rods, 60% of that, so 60 pounds of that 100 pounds of rods that I've purchased, that's going to be converted into weld deposition. The other 40 pounds is lost in slag and stubs. And I'm not talking about people like sticking the rod and chucking it and putting a new rod in there. I'm talking like burning it down to the numbers like you're supposed to. Perfect, hypothetical, perfect environment. If you take that 100 pounds, you burn them all down to the numbers, you're only going to burn 60% of those rods up. The other 40% is lost to slag, smoke, and rod stubs. So let's just say hypothetically it's $1 a pound. So for every $100 that I spend, I'm only getting $60 of that product. Mm-hmm. Whereas if I switch over to a flux core, I'm getting a much higher deposition rate, but also an electrode efficiency. And like for field work,
75, 78.
Yeah, it's like 75 to 80%. And then if we switch over to GMAW, obviously that's going to be done in a shop. But now we're talking 98, 99% with some of these advanced processes, because everything else is just smoke and spatter. And if we can start fine tuning our adjustments using pulse, we're eliminating a lot of that spatter, like with Rapid Arc, Rapid X, things of that nature. So that's the problem that I've run into with employers. It's like, if you invest in some decent equipment, your welding productivity is going to go up. And that's a big thing for these companies, because you're a welding company, you're a manufacturing company, and welding is a large part of what you do. but it is the area that you invest the least in. You know, you're gonna
Oh,
go
yeah.
out and buy a multi-million-dollar shear, a laser cutter, a plasma cutter, but you know you're still running off this, you know, Miller-Matic 252 from 1997. Granted, it's a good machine, it'll run, but we've come a long way since then. You know, there's advanced processes, and you guys aren't welding. You know, you're just welding flat. You know, switch over to a spray transfer. All you have to do is swap out your gas.
Yeah, I mean, you could run spray transfer on a 252 all day long.
Yeah.
You know, 035 wire. Like I said,
I had a company that I was explaining that exact same process, and I was like, you know, if you're running 75-25, you've already got the wire, you got the machine. You know, if you switch over your bottles to an 85-15, I said you can run that stuff in there and spray, and then you don't have to try and qualify a procedure for short circuit. It's already done because you can run it and spray in the flat position. That's all you're welding in is flat. And guess the guy's answer was, yeah, but you know, we don't want to have so many different bottles lying around here, and the guy's getting confused. What the hell? Because they run 70.
Like, oh man, our guys can't read good, so we better not go any faster.
It's like, you know, if there's a label.
Hell is that?
Yeah, there's a label on the top of each bottle that tells you what's in there, and say, hey guys, I mean, if they're that dense, like, and I told him, I said, I can come down here on a Saturday and I can give you guys a class in like 20 minutes and show you how to run both processes, and you're going to save thousands of dollars. You know, with the amount of guys you got in here, you're going to save thousands off a 20-minute class. And he's like, yeah, but they'll get it confused because we run 75-25